And the two myths I call the differentiation myth, which is, you can go to any client if you're a company and consultancy and say, you need to be completely unique. Otherwise you can't compete. Is that true? And is that true in services? I don't think it's true, and I'll argue why in a minute. I don't think you need to differentiate yourself and be completely unique. The other one is called this table stake myth, which is basically you cannot compete on basic, quality. You're becoming a commodity, it's all about price, you have to be completely different and do something that nobody has seen before. And how do you come up with ideas that truly are different and nobody has seen before? Well, brainstorming is a pretty good tool for that, except it doesn't work. And so I wrote a list about, is it that difficult to design a good service? I think it is difficult, but I'm not so sure it's the ideas that are difficult. And is it true that if you're a service provider or you are a product provider that wants to build a service, that you really have to make it different from everybody else? If you're a mobile telephony company, do you really have to be different? I don't think so. I think you have to deliver a certain piece of value, and I've written again I love lists. So this is my list of what is good service, right? And the list is you need to have quality in the service, a good quality in the service and the product has to be good. Number 2, it has to be simple. Number 3, it has to be convenient. Number 4, it has to be reliable. Number 5, it has to be reasonable value for money. All right? And if you take those 5 principles and take any service provider, let's go and do some field work now. How many people on a scale between those companies from 0 to 10 can score on these 5 issues? Not a lot. There's a whole lot of work to do just to do what marketing people would call table stakes or non-differentiating factors or basic factors and so on. Those things are not easy to provide if you do, make mobile telephones or your car rental companies or airline or taxi services or even business-to-business services. To be reliable, convenient, simple, have a nice quality and reasonable value for money. That's pretty hard, pretty tough to design that. And therefore, it's also nice to have these extra services, like it's really attractive design, or it's really explosive brand communication, it's friendly big graphics, and it's wonderful, and no one's hurting themselves, and so on. But it can't substitute the other factors. You have to get those basic factors right, in my world at least. And what happens is that designers, and especially design consultancies, are very, very often hired to do the peripheral part. To all the fun part, like the wow, cool, bang part of the whole thing, right? And not the core part. But if you look at the things that I think designers are good at, they would be actually much better at just making, a mobile telephone service simpler. Making a car company more convenient. Making an airline reasonable value for money, and so on. So that was my third point. Forget brainstorming, because that's not going to solve this issue. And then I think it's about time to find out what is then the problem-solving method that really works. My fourth point, and then I have one more, then I'll finish, is really about designing consequences. I have myself made quite a few mistakes following the design studio method in my own life. The first concept I came up with was a couple of years ago for Adidas. And we studied, women that did training and fitness, and found out what are their unmet needs, and we did ethnography and all those stuff. And we found, the key to this thing is it's pretty damn hard to motivate yourself when you do fitness, right? It's, how can I keep going, And there needs to be things designed around this, motivational issue. So we came up with this digital shoe that was connected to a watch and a software program, and that could kind of, with music and so on, and it could then, motivate you. And we didn't think it was enough, so the economist in me said that we have to come up with a business model that's interesting here. So I talked to the biggest insurance agency in the US, and we came up with this idea. What if the shoe motivated you? Like, the more you use it, the more you get motivated. And there I left for the moon, then I started brainstorming and forgot reality. And so, and they said, this would be great, because you know what? If we can get, people to move more, to do more fitness, we will make more money, because then we'll have a less payout. So it's a beautiful business model. And Adidas, they don't have to do any marketing. It will be sold through, an insurance company, and you can come up with all these services, and it'll be a great offering. And it was a great offering, and I think you can see other companies, and particularly one of the biggest competitors, coming up with exactly the same kind of ideas at the moment. But Adidas couldn't. Why was this a mistake? What was my mistake in this case? If I was a service designer, I forgot to find out who's the company. What are they capable of? What is their roots? I didn't do my ethnography inside the company. If I did that, I would find out that they are a product company. They don't have any people that can service people. They haven't got the capabilities. They don't think that services are particularly important. They measure everything in shoes. And that might be wrong, and we might be able to change that, but you can't come with a rocket concept and say, like, you should work with an insurance company and make a shoe with music, and it just doesn't, they can't build it, They can't service it. And what it will end up with, we will add complexity to their business model, which is what most service design projects does. They add complexity. And believe me, if all of you who knows a CEO or something like it, it's pretty complex already. Small things can have big consequences. So they're not looking for things that can make their world more complex. They're looking for things that can make it more simple. I saw another project that had this character. It was a project I saw here in Denmark, where some people had done a study on kindergartens, a very good study of how could you make life in kindergartens better. And they studied the children and the parents and so on, and they came up with these ideas that, if you know just anybody working in the kindergarten, it's not relevant. I mean, they're not technologists. It's not engineers working. One of the ideas was, there should be RFIDs, senders in every little kid, and then, the parents could track on the internet, where's my kid now? And it's a nice idea, you can. But these people are just people that care about kids, They don't need technologists to do that, and they don't respect technologies. They're not capable of working with technologies in that way. And therefore, we have to, as designers, understand the people we are designing for a little more. And I call that designing consequences. Okay, the last thing I will talk about is business models. I think it's really damn hard. I don't know, maybe you think it's easy to design a business model for service, because 90% of services are just costs. Improving customer care and so on is just adding costs. Even though people are happy and so on. Then you can argue, oh yeah, it's good for the brand, or it's good for something else. But really, when it comes down to the spreadsheet, it's cost. And therefore, I haven't seen yet any company who has an R&D budget for service innovation. I haven't seen that in it. I would love to see a company that, this year we're going to spend 50 million on service innovation. But I've seen, hundreds of companies that have much bigger budgets for product innovation. Why? It's because there is a business model for product. It works. You can make money. It's easy. There is no business model, at least as I know it, for services. And I see a couple of problems. One of them is what economists call, economies of scale. When you come up with a great idea, how can you scale it? And therefore, reap the benefits of, increased production of it. The other one is really, how can you create barriers to entry? How can you make it difficult for your competitors to come in and just copy? Services are easy to copy, as I see it. One example is Carlsberg. They came up with a service actually 6 months ago called Carlsberg Extra Cold, which was a bartender concept, which is all about serving extra cold beer and then educating bartenders and so on around this. And after 2 months, Heineken had exactly the same, called Heineken Cold. And as they said, it's just adding to costs. We're not making more, we're not growing our business doing this. And they have quite big difficulties in finding out how to take service. Well, one thing I thought about was, what if we could take some advertising money and spend it on service design? Wouldn't that be beautiful? Because advertising is not working anyway. And they're spending a hell of a lot of money on it. So why not treat customers better and make your brand and so on? And I think that's a task for designers and for companies to look a little more at their budget. The other advice I had is really to, when we design services, really to think about the revenue stream. How can we avoid it just adding costs? Because then it's easier to get on a CEO's agenda. It's easier to get those innovation budgets rolling, and it's easier to make money of it in the end.